This live presentation was produced in Ashland, Oregon by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. RVML relies on the support of our volunteers, members, and donors to organize and present these programs. For more information about this presentation, or to borrow, download, or purchase other recordings from our catalog, please visit our website at rvml.org.
So how many people came tonight because they wanted to know how shamanism and homeopathy actually connected? And how many people came because they know nothing about homeopathy and wanted to learn about that? First, the shamanism part. Because I told someone in the back, I'm going to have to see for myself how I make the connection, because I'm going on the journey right now tonight. And what about just learning about homeopathy? Has anyone here tried homeopathy on themselves? Anyone had mixed results, like not sure if it really works? There's one hand, a couple hands, good. Because I also spent many years working with homeopathy and trying it and seeing various results, some positive, some not so positive, and wondered if it was truly a system that one could utilize reliably and get good results consistently. And it wasn't until I embarked on a journey of understanding that homeopathy was a spiritual science and not a medical science that I began to understand it well enough to achieve the kind of results that I think it has the potential for, and avoid a lot of the pitfalls where many of you who have tried it perhaps have seen that, well, sometimes it seems to work, sometimes it seems not to work, and what makes the difference. There's a book that was written by the founder of homeopathy, and his name was Samuel Hahnemann. He was a German medical doctor who lived a little over 200 years ago. And he wrote this little treatise. It's called The Organon of Medicine. And this kind of makes me laugh, because anyone who's ever looked at the library of a medical doctor, you know, there's just tomes and tomes lining all the walls. If you go to a surgeon and have a consultation in their private consultation room, you'll see they've got, you know, walls and walls of books, and you'll think, this is good, at least I'm in good hands, he knows something. He or she knows something. But this literally is all you need to know to be a master homeopath. But very few homeopaths truly understand what's in this. I'm going to read a little bit from it today just to give you a flavor of what homeopathy is about and how the founder wrote about it. But it's amazing to think that in 200 years' time, modern medicine has kind of changed and recalibrated itself and changed its opinions. And they say that the half-life of any of the conventional medical wisdom of today is about 2.5 years. So the truth of today will be different in about 2.5 years. But this has been unchanged since its inception, which is not all that long, a couple hundred years. I think in the shamanistic tradition also, the techniques, the concepts, the principles have also not really changed in millennia, because we're dealing with natural laws that can be unearthed by people who can see and understand. And the laws of nature and the principles of life and spirit don't seem to change that much over time. Our understanding may change, but the actual laws themselves don't. So I'll read a little bit from this. It's a lot cheaper way to learn, by the way. Instead of hundreds of thousands of dollars in books, you spend about $15 for the Indian press here. So just to start off, let me give you a little bit of a flavor. I went on the internet. I'm not an academic person. I haven't researched shamanism in depth. But it occurred to me after working with the homeopathic principles, after a while I realized that being a spiritual science, there must be a connection, since shamanism is a spiritual science as well. So I went on the internet and went to all kinds of sites just to read what people had to say in an introductory way about what shamanism was. I'm just going to read a little bit here. Just bear with me. The remarkable system of methods that developed is today known as shamanism, a term that comes from a Siberian tribal word for its practitioners, shaman. Shamans are a type of medicine man or woman, especially distinguished by the use of journeys to hidden worlds, otherwise mainly known through myth, dream, and near-death experiences. Sounds kind of intriguing. Knowledge of other realms of being and consciousness and the cosmology of those regions is the basis of the shamanic perspective and power. With this knowledge, the shaman is able to serve as a bridge between the mundane and the higher and lower states. Shamanism is not New Age stuff. Many of the techniques have been researched back 40,000 years. So when I say that homeopathy is not New Age stuff either, it only goes back 200 years, but actually much further. Because Hahnemann himself was a Freemason. Does anyone know where the Freemasons actually came from? Any ideas? Well, the Freemasons actually date back to the building of Solomon's Temple, a little over 2,000 years ago. They were craftsmen who were trained in the spiritual arts as well as the arts of craft in order to build the great temples in Jerusalem. And they were initiated into the great secrets that King Solomon, who was considered to be the wisest man alive at the time, initiated these disciples into the secrets of mystical Judaism, basically, Kabbalah and those kinds of things, esoteric knowledge. And that tradition is carried through in different veins throughout history, some of it seeming very far apart and disassociated from its roots. But nevertheless, Hahnemann was deeply educated in Freemasonry, as well as other spiritual disciplines. So in some ways, that tradition goes back more than 200 years. Remember, the shamanic practitioner's work is solely within the realm of spirit, and that no effects, no changes in the physical world are guaranteed or implied whatsoever. It sounds a little bit like legalese. Like, I ain't going to guarantee you nothing, but we're going to make a spiritual effect for you. Very clearly, shamanic work is not in conflict with current traditions of medicine, whether physiological or psychological. Shamanic healing work is unique in that it can directly access soul. We're not going to define soul, but I think we all have a feeling of that part of us that's non-material, has a spiritual nature. We'll just call it soul, capital S, and it could be anything that, any aspect of that. Soul transcends time and place and carries living memories of all events and our response to those events, success, celebration, good times, as well as trauma. Today we treat most often our symptoms, and that's a real good thing to do. That's what this writer said. But miss the core, the causal issues. Often, a healing of symptoms in the now, however wonderfully successful, may only further subvert primal causal issues. So this is part of the crisis some of us sense when we look at the conventional approaches to health and disease, in that so many times we suppress symptoms, but the person continues down a path of a degradation of their health, a decline in their well-being, even though the symptoms may be controlled. Then at some future time, those simmering residual trauma issues, again still crying for our attention, manifest once more in disease, illness, or distress, often more serious, more intense than before. Thus goes the old saying, things get worse until you pay attention to them. So that's a little smattering of the concept of shamanism. Obviously, the field is broad and deep, and the training of a good shaman is extensive. In native cultures, you'd often hear that a shaman would apprentice a student for anywhere from 10 to 15 and upwards of 20 years. Many of us have probably read like the Don Juan books, and you see some of the extensive ordeals that Carlos Castaneda had to go through in order to learn the lessons that Don Juan so much wanted him to understand. And entering into non-ordinary realms is kind of the mainstay of the shamanic path. And different shamanic traditions around the world apparently use slightly different techniques, but in essence, they work in the dream realms, they work with the spiritual guides, they work with animal guides, all in a non-material, non-physical form. And again, when they do a healing, when they do work with people, they make no specific guarantees about what will manifest in this material being of our body, our mental and emotional pieces, our physical pieces. But they do make claims about making spiritual changes, which then can hopefully reflect in the physical, mental, and emotional realms. Now, what I'm going to read now, just a few paragraphs from this book, give you a flavor of someone working in a different time in a different place, not having any reference per se to shamanism, but to an idea or a concept that the way that people heal, the way that health and disease works in life, is primarily not a material issue. It's not a material question. So the sore throat you get, the strep throat, or the arthritis that you might have, or the Alzheimer's that you might have, whatever name we might give to a condition, is really an illusion that we carry, because the true dis-ease or the true disease is primarily from another plane of existence, and that plane is considered to be the spiritual plane by shamans as well as homeopaths. So let me just read briefly. The first paragraph of the Organon, Hahnemann states, "The physician's high and only mission is to restore the sick to health, to cure, as it is termed." And many people say, well, as it is termed by who? Who's terming this? And the answer is it's termed by a higher power. He's always referencing something higher, something greater. In the healthy condition of man, this is paragraph 9, the spiritual vital force, the dynamis that animates the material body, rules with unbounded sway. Now this is thick language. It's translated from the German. It's very difficult to make a clean, clear translation from German to English, especially when they're using very special jargon type concepts. But just get a flavor of it. It's not so important you understand every word. So in the healthy condition of man, he says that the vital force or life force rules with unbounded sway, meaning it controls everything, and retains all the parts of the organism in admirable, harmonious, vital operation as regards both sensations and functions. So what about the DNA? Doesn't science say that the DNA controls everything? That's kind of our modern medical concept. The Genome Project, it's going to unlock the miracles of curing all kinds of things. Because on the material level, that's the highest reference point. Hierarchically, the DNA has the most effect on how our physiology is going to work. So we talk about the gene, and we talk about chromosomes, and we talk about miracle cures with genetic engineering. And yet Hahnemann, like the shamans, say, no, the causal level is not in the body at all. The causal level has something to do with forces of spirit, life forces, vital force, which rule and control with unbounded sway and keeps us in harmonious balance and harmonious function. So what is it that happens to that vital force when we become ill? The material organism without the vital force is capable of no sensation, no function, no self-preservation. It derives all sensations and performs all the functions of life solely by means of the immaterial being, the vital principle, which animates the material organism in health and disease. When a person falls ill, it is only this spiritual self-acting vital force everywhere present in his organism that is primarily deranged by the dynamic influence upon it of a morbific agent inimical to life. Well, what is a morbific agent inimical to life? Now you know why, this is all we need, because it takes years just to figure out each sentence. But a morbific agent inimical to life, in Hahnemann's terms, is some spiritual entity that is anti-life, that's influencing our being on what level? Not material, not like a virus or a bacteria, but something non-material, as spiritual as the life force, but as invisible on the same plane. And by being on that level, it can interact with that thing that we call the vital force. Now, this sounds a little bit airy-fairy, perhaps. What are we talking? Are we talking about demons? Are we talking about, what are these forces inimical to life? How can you prove them? You can't measure them. You can't measure vital force either.
Well, acupuncture talks about the life force or chi, and they measure it all the time.
They sense it.
Or sense it.
Yeah. They don't really measure. There's not a machine that I know of.
Not quantitative.
Right. They can't really measure.
Qualitative.
Right. And this is the stumbling block in terms of our world today, because we live in a world of so-called material science. And material science does not have a tool, and may never have a tool, where you can weigh or quantify this life force. Although I've heard said that when people pass, that their weight actually changes. I've not witnessed that myself, but there's some weight, which is surprising to me. I'm not sure what's underlying that, but I've heard that. At any rate, he says, it is only the vital principle deranged to such an abnormal state that can furnish the organism with its disagreeable sensations and incline it to the irregular processes which we call disease. So this inimical agent, whatever it is, and this is the way I like to look at it. Can people see in the back? Let's suppose this is not a sunrise, and it's not looking at the sun through a peephole in a boat. Let's just say this is your soul, vital force, life energy, whatever. And this is you as manifested on the material plane. So if your life force is unobstructed and non-disturbed or non-deranged, then it shines in all directions into your being. It's everywhere, in all parts, in all times. It's moving, it's flowing, it's free. And you have kind of a perfect expression of that, which we symbolize with a circle. Now let's suppose along comes an evil invader, kind of like Star Wars or something, and some spiritual entity that looks like this comes in and glues on to your life force, comes into your auric field, or who knows what we're going to call it. Let's not get stuck on words, because I have no idea what to call these things. And by gluing here, you no longer have a free flow of energy in this direction. So now we have a shadow cast here. And let's say that this shadow now is a change in your manifestation of being in your body. So now, this is invisible to us. This is not. Because this is you as we see, you sitting on the chair here. This is the vital principle in you that we surmise is operating all the time. If it's not there, supposedly, then you must be dead. And this is some inimical, what Hahnemann said, morbific agent, an inimical force to life, something anti-life. And so here we see that you've got pimples on your nose. And here we see that your daily regime in the morning is irregular. Here we see that you're afraid of mice. And here we see that you have a allergy to something. So all these parts come together in a shape and a pattern, and they have different pieces which you could express to people. So if you go to a modern practitioner who doesn't believe so much in the spirit and the hierarchy of things, you would see your psychiatrist to help you get rid of your fear of mice, if it's a phobia. You would see your skin doctor to help you with your pimples. You would see, what was that? Oh yeah, you would go to your allergist, get some immunizations against allergy, and whatever that was, you'd see your black dot specialist for that. All along, completely ignoring what's going on here. Everyone follow? So what Hahnemann's saying is that when you disturb this vital force, it's as if you cast a shadow. And that shadow, because it's deprived of a free flow of energy, begins to exert itself in a very unique way, characteristic of the nature of this, combined with the nature of you, combined with what you come into the world with, and then you get a unique pattern. And that pattern we can all see and observe. And it's what makes you seek help. Paragraph 15. The affection of the morbidly deranged spirit-like dynamis, or vital force, that animates our body in the invisible interior, and the totality of the outwardly cognizable symptoms. In other words, what you can see. The symptoms you can see. Produced by it. Produced by that morbid thing. It constitutes a whole. It's not a bunch of pieces. This is what he says. Paragraph 16. Our vital force as a spirit-like dynamis cannot be attacked and affected by injurious influences on the healthy organism caused by the external forces that disturb the harmonious play of life otherwise than in a spirit-like way. So again, heavy language, kind of dense language to get through if you're not familiar with German ways of phrasing things. But what he's saying is that the only way this can really happen is in a spirit-like way. Not like we think, all these bacteria, viruses, etc. It's not to say that we don't believe that these things exist. Bacteria, viruses, other contagious things in life. Things that cause epidemics and cause widespread disease in large population groups. It's just that these, you have a little virus that under the microscope maybe looks like that. And someone says, well, that's causing the disease that you have. But is everyone aware that bacteria and viruses are ubiquitous in the environment? Is everyone also aware that for the most part, we carry a lot of these on our person all the time? So for example, has anyone had chicken pox? Whatever they call that disease, chicken pox. So one of the things that happens after you recover from that is a lot of that virus lays dormant in your nervous system. And if you're one of those unhappy people who, through a stress in later life, develops a reactivation of that, it comes out as what's called shingles. Which is bad news. But needless to say, if this is the cause, how come we're not all sick all the time? It's in us. That virus is in most of us who had chickenpox. It's there all the time. We have bacteria around us all the time. We're not always sick. And so what a homeopath would say is that if you compromise a person's vitality through one or more of these inimical forces to life, it opens up a susceptibility. And the susceptibility, which we see this way, may open the door for those things to take advantage of us when normally they weren't able to. So Louis Pasteur, who was one of the fathers of microbiology, said, the soil is everything, the microbe is nothing. And we think it's the other way around. The microbes, everything. We talk about bacteria all the time. Antibiotic-resistant bacteria, this super bacteria, this and that. Everyone's afraid of bacteria. We're germ-phobic. But in essence, the soil, meaning our whole being, is either open or closed to that invasion. So what you might see with a spiritual intervention, like a shaman may take an individual from the community, and they may have some kind of very serious infective process. Maybe they have, a skin infection that's rapidly spreading. And we all know that the skin infection is composed of bacteria or some other organism, and then the host, that is home to that. And what the shaman does is not necessarily anything to the skin. The shaman may go on a journey to discover what is disturbed in the spiritual realm. Maybe part of the soul has been broken off and he needs to bring it back. They call that soul retrieval. Maybe there was a soul trauma from another life and he has to repair that, help repair that. Who knows what the etiology? But what the shaman will tell you is that he went somewhere, did something spiritually, made a correction or an intervention spiritually, and as a result of that, this kind of disturbance was weakened or dissipated. And as it weakened and dissipated, the light of the vital force or the energy of the vital force was restored and renewed. And then it began to shine again or flow again throughout the being, removing this shadow. And when that happens, what happens to those bacteria that are having a heyday? They disappear, they go away. People think, well, that doesn't make sense. You need an antibiotic. Does anybody know what really happens when you take an antibiotic?
Well, one of the principles of antibiotic failure is that if the immune system can overcome the infection, or if you have other focal points such as pus or a foreign body, you're not going to get rid of the infection.
Right, so the answer, I don't know if everyone heard, but that the idea is that if the immune system isn't properly working, or you have another focus of infection that's not so easily penetrated, you may not be able to resolve the infection even with the right antibiotic. We know for sure that if you take a piece of meat that's infected with a bacteria, and then you slather it with the appropriate antibiotic, it will not eradicate the organism. It's very difficult to completely sterilize. Even surgeons will tell you, the studies show that when the surgeons sterilize they wipe your belly before they cut you open, and they put all this, betadine and Physahex and all these disinfectants, that's just lowering the numbers. It's not getting rid of all of it. And people who are very depleted, either very elderly or been sick for very long and they're in intensive care, if they, for example, have a pneumonia, and it's compromising them to the point of near death, the antibiotic they are on may be the exact right one. Bacteria very sensitive to that and killed by that antibiotic, but they will still succumb because their vitality is insufficient. So when you do a spiritual correction and you remove this obstacle, it has been found that the immune system, among other things, can coordinate in their activities and overcome the infection on their own. And I've seen this many, many times. Antibiotics are just a piece of the puzzle. But the best antibiotics known to man is a very healthy, active immune system. That's antibiotic, meaning it kills life. But it kills the right kind of life. Whereas the antibiotic pill is a little less discriminating. So the pill may kill the bacteria, but it also may weaken the organism. Okay. So back to shamanism for a moment. To how many here did this reading sound very material and medical? And to how many did it seem to relate somewhat to what I read about shamanism in terms of the spiritual roots? So some people will say, well, the shaman uses the energy and force of spirit, either through guides or other spiritual help, to make a correction for an individual. How would a homeopath do such a thing? So everybody knows, if they've seen a homeopathic remedy, that they come in these little vials. And has anyone not seen a homeopathic remedy? Okay. So I'm just going to let people pass this around. Please don't open it. There's 2 little pellets that I just flipped into the cap. And they'll always look more or less like that. Those pellets are milk sugar. But absorbed onto that milk sugar is the active principle, I'll say, because it's not an ingredient. I'll just pass this around so you can see it. People say, how do you, in the homeopathic world, claim to work spiritually when your tools are something material? And I'll pass that around to see what our tool is. Hahnemann said that you can't know the effect of a medicine unless you do an experimental test. So that when you want to know what the medicinal healing powers of any substance in nature truly is, you must first submit it to, we think of tests as what they do in modern medicine, which is they give sick people a drug and they compare it to people getting placebo. Hahnemann said, no, we don't know what this drug does if you give it to sick people first. We have to experiment first on healthy people. It sounds a little bit kind of opposite of how we look at it. These tests were called provings. It's more of a, I guess the translation of proving would be taste. And by taste, what we do is we have a physical substance. Let's say that we have a flower, a mountain daisy. And that mountain daisy, we heard through some indigenous peoples that lived in the area, had medicinal properties. So Hahnemann said, let's find out what the true medicinal property is. And we're going to give this mountain daisy to a group of healthy people, and we're going to accurately record their response. And someone raised their hand and said, but we can't give this mountain daisy to healthy people because it's toxic. That would be violating the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. He says, oh, don't worry. I'm a homeopath. I'm talking about a spiritual approach to disease. I don't care about the material effects. I want to see what the spiritual effects are. So we're going to render this plant completely non-toxic by evolving it back to its spirit. People may have the concept that in the way that the universe was created, before there was form, before there was material substance, there was like an idea. That first there was like an essence of something. And that essence was a spiritual thing. And as it went through the different realms of existence into the realm we live in now, it got condensed and condensed and condensed until it could actually have a material coating, which we call body. So that liberated from this material form, what's left is something essential that's not material at all, it's spiritual. We say that about people when they die. We say, well, yeah, their body stayed here, but their true being, their true self, went somewhere else. We usually don't think that their true self stayed here. So Hahnemann found a process by which you could take any substance and restore it back to its, or towards its spiritual essence. And by doing that process, you eliminate the material form altogether. And then you have in your hand some spiritual principle, more like a prayer than anything else. As if you're holding a prayer on a sugar pill. But that prayer is very specific in that it has a relationship exactly to the essence of this thing. How do we do that? Well, Hahnemann found a very unique process. He said, take a substance, dilute it in a solvent, and he usually used water or pure alcohol, and then shake it vigorously. After you've shaken it vigorously, take a small part of that and take a new vial of solution, fresh solution, and dilute it again, and then shake it vigorously again. And then do that and repeat that process over and over again. Each time you repeat it, label it as for example, if you dilute 1 time to 100, we'll call that a C, potency. C being the Roman numeral for 100. And if you do it 1 dilution, it would be a 1C. But what happens if you do that dilution 1 in 100 3 times? That's a 3C. But a 3C is 100 times 100 times 100. That's 1,000,000. So first you started with 1 in 100, which is, if you had like table salt, let's say, and you put 1 part per 100 and you tasted it, you'd probably taste a little salt. How about if you diluted that to a 3C, how much salt would you taste? Now what happens when you dilute it to a 12C? That's 1 times 100, 100 times 100 times 100, 12 times. That's a number that in science is known as Avogadro's number. And Avogadro, who was not an avocado, said that once you get to his number, you have basically 1 atom left of the substance. Roughly speaking, I'm not actually technically exact what I'm saying. But you can be pretty sure statistically that if you take a grain or a petal from this flower or a grain of salt or a grain of sand and dilute it and shake it, 12 times 1 to 100, statistically you have maybe 1 molecule left. Well, what happens when you do a 13C? Besides that it's an unlucky number. Statistically, there should be absolutely nothing left. Correct?
1 chance in 100 that you'll have a molecule.
1 chance in 100, right. And if I was a betting man, I'd go with nothing. Well, we have remedies that are diluted way beyond 13C. In fact, the ones I'm passing around, let's see, what are they? Those are 12C. So those are already at the level of non-material. Even if it's less than a 12C, where there's some statistical probability that you'll have some material in it, from a physiologic standpoint, it's completely irrelevant, because in concentrations of parts per quadrillions and more, it has no physiological activity at all. That's understood by pharmacology and physiology. But many of our remedies go way beyond that. And what Hahnemann proved is that when you go beyond the material and you keep diluting and shaking, you increase its impact on the organism. But the impact on the organism is not on the physical organism, it's back to that vital force. He proved that because he gave these type substances, put through the process of dilution and shaking, he gave these, I don't know, no one knows what to call it. I keep wanting to say give this pill or this thing. It's not a thing. He gave a spiritual principle encased in a pill form to healthy people and watched how they all developed symptoms. And the symptoms they developed related to the original substance, as if the essence that was liberated through this process or manufacturing of a remedy had an action and a power. And that power was not visible in itself. It was visible in its interaction with living things. And the best living things to experiment on were people, because they could talk. If you gave it to another plant or you gave it to an animal, you couldn't be sure what the true effect was. But giving it to people, they could say interesting things. Let me read a few interesting things that people said when they submitted to such tests. Okay. Remember, they're ingesting nothing. They're ingesting a prayer. They're ingesting an essence. Even if they're ingesting something that has a little material, the quality or the active principle is not the physical substance. It's the evolving spiritual form that's having an impact. And it would be like octaves on a piano. The higher you go in the octave, it's not really changing the note, but it's changing some quality. So as you go higher and higher in the potency scale, you're getting a more refined, a more intensified note. So here's what some people said. I felt as if a heavy gray cloud with red specks descended down to my chest, entering into me. That's what I felt this morning. I feel the cloud is lifting. It is now gray with green flecks. Felt really strong love for children. Felt I could really see my daughter, that she was mine, of me, but separate. Clarity of mind noticeably improved. Feeling quiet, did not want to see patients, but it went amazingly well. Made quick, sharp, and clear prescriptions. Clear, fast decision-making. Feel clear, incisive, perceptive, sparkling, attractive, connected. These people don't know what they're testing. They're just reporting. The proving experience was very clear. There was a sharpness in both how I felt and what I saw. Feel sparkly, definitely not sluggish. This was a test, or what Hahnemann calls proving, of diamond. Notice the words that these people use. Clarity, sparkle, sharp. They didn't know what it was, but they... Here's another one. Fear as if something terrible would happen. On occasions, experience fear, especially of being attacked in the street. Felt out of control. His emotions took over. Felt terror, panic, fear, and that he could not cope. Did not know what to do, was stricken with panic. Terrified, he raced back to bed where he felt hot, so he uncovered. Then felt cold, so he covered. Then hot, so he uncovered and sat up and immediately felt better. Happened to me last night. Very strong liking and disliking to people. Very intense, ranging from immense sexual attraction to extreme hatred. Spoke with hatred and maliciousness about colleagues. Terrible, uncontrollable temper. Does this sound like the same substance?
No.
It's not. This is a scorpion. The deadliest scorpion known to man. And they did not know when they did the test.
What power was it?
The question is, what potency was this? And, we have this joke. Mother tincture means that it's the raw material. I promise it wasn't mother tincture. Let's see. It does say somewhere. Usually what they're doing is anything from a 6C to a 30C. But let's see. Here they say. Yeah, it doesn't say. It is recorded somewhere because you have to in the proving. I can't find it.
Is this Hahnemann?
No, this is a modern day homeopath who did this book. But Hahnemann did the same thing.
Uh-huh.
He has a couple volumes of about 80 different remedies.
Was this double blind?
No, the way you do a proving is you take a group of, say, double blind in the sense that the person who is conducting the proving is the only one that knows the remedy because he picked it. But the people who are investigating let me rephrase it. The experiment group of, say, 12 to 20 people have no idea what they're taking, and the supervisors who study them don't know what they took.
But the people that are giving it to them know.
No, the people who are studying the experimental group does not know what their group is taking. The only one who knows is the one who picked the substance to test. And sometimes they choose not to know because they'll say, let's do a test on 5 things. Don't tell me which ones we're doing. So a lot of times they don't know. What's interesting is that you get a group, say of 12 to 15 people, and you hear this. I mean, it's quite a distinction between the first reading and the second, right? It's interesting. You go around the world. You take a Chinese group, and they'll have very similar type experiences as any other group. And they would do provings or tests on the same remedies that Hahnemann proved 200 years ago and give it to people today, and they find the same kinds of things. So it's not double-blind in the sense of like they do modern tests, but when you're doing the initial experiments, nobody knows what they took or what to think about it.
Are these always natural substances that occur in nature?
Mostly. There are some exceptions. But for the most part, we use what we can get our hands on.
What would be an example of an exception?
Well, I guess they're all from here, but people have used sunlight, for example. People have used microwave as an example, a magnet, the energy of a magnet. I mean, I guess it's all. They also will make a proving out of a drug. They'll also make a proving out of a very dangerous chemical. You can do that as well. They've made provings out of radioactive things, plutonium, things like that. So here's something. Sensation as if pair of wings. Sensation as if folded. Can be aware of them behind my shoulders. Measured 7 feet by 7 feet. Not open. Searching for the number 7 on the backs of chairs. Babies looked in on first day of proving, 1 14 months, 1 14 weeks, 1 14 days. Problems have begun halfway through at 7 months, 7 weeks, and 7 days. Sensation as if 7 stars in a ring around my head. This was the substance iridium, atomic number 77. So people ask, do homeopaths travel in other realms? Do they do vision quests? Do they experience other levels of consciousness? And I would submit by these readings that people experience an unordinary consciousness by participating in an experimental group to test a remedy. And the reason the consciousness is altered is because they're exposed not to a physical substance, but to a spiritual entity, which is essentially what is the inner being of that substance. Does everyone follow that?
Well, if they tested a scorpion, could they, did a proving on a scorpion? How about doing a proving on a human being?
No, I think you missed. Did you mean that seriously, or you?
Well, yes.
Yeah. Maybe you could rephrase that. I'm not sure I understood.
Well, you mentioned earlier there was a proving of a scorpion.
Well, they took a scorpion. This is literally how they did it. They embalmed the scorpion in alcohol. All right? They had this scorpion in a box for like 9 months, no food, no light, nothing. It was still alive. It's absolutely amazing. So then they injected alcohol up the scorpion's rectum. Now you wonder why these people were so angry. Embalmed it. And then eventually, I think they took the whole thing, macerated it, and then diluted it sequentially, and eventually, derived a potency of it. And now in this potency, we say we have essence of scorpion, right? It's like, in cooking, what do they say? Like zest of orange. And so we have essence of scorpion. And then you take 12, unwary individuals who are probably medical students, and they volunteer. And you take that, and then over the next few days, you record, or maybe even weeks to months, you record changes in your normal function. So that would be the test of the scorpion on people like us.
Right.
So then your question was, do they?
Well, could they do that with a corpse?
Yes, they could do it with anything. They have many remedies made from milks, including human milk, other animal milk, milk from a cow, milk from a monkey, milk from a wolf.
Yeah. Milk from
Yeah.
a cadaver in a medical store? I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not being funny.
Okay, we're going to have a question and answer also, but I thought I might. Why don't we take one more question just for a moment? Or halfback, you.
Okay, I'm really curious. Okay, so those poor folks took that remedy of the scorpion. So what happened to them? How did they,
You know, it's the same question as what happened. What happened to the college student who took LSD? They went on a trip and came back. That's all.
So they got over it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they went on a trip and came back. They were never quite the same. That's true. All in the back.
Since we're all breathing and we're breathing microscopic, highly, highly diluted essences of
Right.
everything constantly.
Right. Excellent question. Since we're all partaking of diluted things, how come we're all not proving everything all the time? Proving meaning getting effect. Would you like to? Yeah.
Because the
Louder if you could,
the
please.
substances that we're doing haven't gone through the homeopathic process of shaking and dilution.
Yeah.
Well, they have in the air.
Okay.
Yeah, but
So-
it's not the same.
The truth of the matter is, I think his answer is correct, which is most things in nature have not gone through the dilution succussion process, which is called potentization, making it a potency or a power. However, we have some examples in nature. Think of some of the mineral baths, where things are bubbling and churning and diluting and bubbling and churning and diluting. What are they known for? But some of their therapeutic principles. And what does modern science say? Well, that's just anecdotal, meaning it's just hearsay. However, if you talk to enough people, they say, no, when I go to these baths, I get a healing effect. A lot of those effects, this is what Hahnemann started with. He started with observing nature, saying, it's really interesting. We approach disease as if it's a material thing, and no one ever really gets better for the most part. But we do see some examples in nature where people got real cures. Like not only were their symptoms gone, but they were better. They would say, my life has been restored. It's not just a symptom gone. And he would look and say, well, yeah, some people went to the mineral springs. Some people worked with magnets. Some people got an illness that superseded their chronic illness. Like they caught some kind of flu, and then their chronic problem disappeared completely. And he scratched his head. He says, here's examples of real cures. Let's find out why they worked. And then maybe we can tailor a system of healing according to that. And what he did is little by little began to discern that what was happening was some spiritual change was happening. As the shamans say, most problems stem from problems of the spirit. It doesn't look that way to us. Because number one, we never see this little thing that's disturbing us. We only see how we're disturbed all the time. And it's easy to affect this directly and make you feel like you've done something positive. So now we have this tool. We have this tool of a homeopathic remedy. And we know now, from what I've told you, that it's not a material force. It's a spiritual force. We can't prove it's a spiritual force, but I can prove it's not material because you can't measure anything in it. And we can give it to healthy people, and they have things to say about it. But how do we use them as healing tools? The shaman goes out and does something in the spiritual world. The homeopath doesn't go into the spiritual world and do something. He brings the spiritual world to your doorstep. He puts it in a little bottle and says, if you take the right one, something good could happen. If you take the wrong one, what do you think will happen? Go on a trip, come back. Very good.
It sounds like where you're leading to is that say, you take the scorpion, and it trains your body, your etheric body, if you will, to dissolve the miasm you already have. It stimulates you to take it out, or to deal with it, or to cope with that energy.
Okay, let's do this. Are you going to stay for after the break?
Yeah.
Let's start there. Let me just finish with one piece and let's take a break because I think it's time in 2 minutes. So what I wanted to end with is that Hahnemann found that you could bring spiritual application into the routine and mundane life without having to have special powers to go into the spirit realms and travel and discern on the level that a lot of shamans do. But the knowledge is the same. And so it's coming from a slightly different orientation, but the application is virtually identical in that you're not doing anything but a spiritual intervention, taking a remedy. The reason it heals, the reason it cures, is because that spiritual entity that's in a homeopathic remedy is a match on some level to the nature of this. And if you can match that, it's said that a medicine can, because you can adjust the potency, can always have a force stronger than the natural spiritual force that's disturbing you. So he didn't talk about, making your spirit overcome this evil thing that's affecting you. He talked about using spiritual weapons to annihilate the spiritual entity. So it's like warfare. Now, shamans talk about this also, because you go into these realms, these are evil things. We hear about possessions of people. We hear about exorcisms of people. A lot of this sounds fantastical, and it sounds science fiction. And it's so for movies, Hollywood movies like The Exorcist. But in actual fact, we are all subject to and infested by such things all the time. Why would there be a universe that has, it's a dual universe. We have plus, minus all over the place, right? We have man, woman. We have positive, negative. We have, in any realm you have the positive and the negative, the yin and the yang. So if we have a life-giving life force, and there are all kinds of angels and spirits in the world that are our help and our guide and life-affirming, why is it a hard stretch to realize there are also things in the world and in the universe and in creation that do evil things? And they do evil things on obvious levels like Hitler, and they do evil things on less obvious levels like make you susceptible to strep throat, which is an evil. It's a smaller evil, but it's still an evil. And what we find is that you can apply the correct remedy if you can match the pattern. Notice we're not treating diseases really as we call them. We're not really giving you a remedy for strep throat. The strep throat is just the shape, part of the shape that you're perceiving in this manifested realm. We're trying to use this information to really glean what is the nature of this thing. Once we know the nature of this spiritual, inimical force to life, malefic agent, evil thing, once we know what it looks like, pow! We just get the homeopathic remedy that matches. And how do we know what matches? Because we have experimental groups telling us what it should look like. I want to kill my kid. I feel the number 7 intuitively. Okay? These are things that are bizarre, but what happens when someone comes and says, I'm always at 7s with myself? And then they have another piece of the story and it relates more and more to this substance iridium. I always feel like I'm from another world. Do you know that iridium comes from an asteroid that impacted the Earth? There's like an iridium layer in the Earth's strata. So there are like signatures and there's energies and there's correspondences that are way beyond any mind to fully comprehend. But these patterns and these dynamics are always operating. And when we match it, we can adjust the dose of this spiritual bomb and we can shatter this or weaken it little by little until finally it's removed. And what's left? A healthy, unencumbered life force that rules with unbounded sway. Health, well-being, evolution, growth.
So is this like finding an adversary that you can deal with, who's an adversary to an adversary you can't deal with because these things in nature are more natural to us?
So the remedy being one adversary?
Yeah, the remedy's the adversary that
Yeah.
my organism, my etheric body can deal with, but it will take out the adversary that it's not dealing with.
Can't necessarily overcome on its own. So you have a tool which is also a force inimical to life, because that tool makes people feel less harmonious. Given a healthy person, give them a remedy, they don't feel as healthy taking that remedy as they did before. But they will overcome that because it's not a real disease, it's an artificial thing. Great. This hand went up first.
Were you,
I was actually looking past you.
I thought
Sorry.
maybe you were, that's why.
Yeah, it's okay.
Is there any instance of the ultimate result being affected by how the initial scorpion, flower, whatever, was processed?
Yes. The question is there a difference in the result depending how the remedy was made or processed?
Something has to carry that energetic forward in all.
Yeah, you have to follow the principles of the steps, the practical steps of preparing a remedy. It has to be done with, very specific procedures and care, and it doesn't have to be done by someone who believes.
Right.
A lot of people think about shamanism and homeopathy. Do you have to believe? What happens? Someone wrote this to me. They said, what happens if you have two people with the identical illness? And in this sense, we're not saying disease diagnosis. In other words, the identical illness means they both need the same remedy. And one person is very skeptical and has a negative attitude, and one person is very optimistic and has a positive attitude. Do they both do equally well? Anyone want to guess at that? How many say yes? How many say no? Yeah, in my opinion, it's absolutely no, because it only is common sense. I mean, how many people do as well in life without a remedy when they have a skeptical, negative attitude versus someone who's very positive? In general, that has an impact also. That doesn't rule out the idea that it's not placebo. It just shows that there are other factors that affect your health and progress. Does it work on someone who doesn't believe? Yes. Does it work as well? No. Because the person who doesn't believe often will obstruct their process of healing. You have free will. You have a choice in how you manage your life. You're responsible for what happens in your life. So being responsible, what you do and what you think and what you say and what you feel impacts your life. Can't escape that. But that isn't a proof against remedies working. There was a hand back there, then you.
If an unwell person comes in and presents the symptoms that the well person that took the scorpion essence, so this unwell person comes in and says, I'm angry all the time, I just killed my kid.
Yeah.
It's awful. So do you give him the scorpion remedy?
Correct.
And that's how the healing starts. You give him the same thing that he has.
Yes, the principle of healing is known in homeopathic circles as like cures like, but in the common vernacular, fight fire with fire, misery loves company, all these kinds of things that we have seen in everyday experience. The principle is to match. And if you don't match, you don't generally get any kind of profound healing. So Hahnemann noticed that certain cures occurred in nature, and the reason the cure happened, he deduced, was because something was similar to the intervention, or the occurrence was similar to the disease in question. So it was by likenesses. Also, if you look into spiritual teaching, there's this whole idea that the whole universe is created in similitudes. So you look at the crown of your head, what's the shape of the hair? It's a spiral, right? What's the shape of a snail shell? It's a spiral. What do galaxies look like? It's a spiral. What do atoms look like? It's a spiral. So there's something about similarities in just the design of things.
So the second part of my question is homeopathy a good way for what they now call mental illness, schizophrenia or bipolar?
So homeopathy is not a good way for anything that has its basis in biology. Because we're not, let me rephrase this. I think your question is, can one benefit in their mental illness if they do homeopathy? The answer is yes, but is the remedy for the mental illness? Never. The remedy is always and only for this spiritual inimical force that's disturbing your life force. It is never for your symptoms. It is never for your diagnosis. And that's why I said in the beginning, no one makes a guarantee. We make a spiritual correction with a remedy. We allow you to be released over time from some demonic influence that's deranging or disturbing or untuning your life force. When that is released, your life force should manifest itself according to its nature, according to its essence. What should that look like? It's up to God. But how it usually looks is much more health, much more balance, much more harmony.
I have so many different questions. I guess I'll just ask, do homeopaths have at their disposal like a database of symptoms that you, is a computerized database at this point?
The question is, do we have a database? And I read to you a few symptoms from one text. I have on my computer over 300 such texts, many of them much bigger than this. All symptoms that people have reported, and I can access those through very fancy software. And I can utilize the whole history of homeopathy back 200 years to uncover very strange and peculiar symptoms that may lead me and suggest a remedy I don't even know exists, because there's 2,500 plus remedies in existence today. And some people say that the advent of homeopathy, or the exponential growth of homeopathy, was waiting for the computer age for this reason.
And as a follow-up, do homeopaths typically, I've only ever seen them in those blue things.
Yeah,
Do you guys ever make them yourself?
Okay. The question is, do homeopaths make their own remedies? And the answer is, if you choose to, you can. But being that it's very time-consuming and very meticulous, it's much more pleasurable to pick up the phone and call a pharmacy and order it. And there are many pharmacies that make the remedies according to the specifications of the process. It's also, just so you know, the FDA, ironically, regulates homeopathic remedies as drugs, which is a farce. Because a drug is a material thing that has a physiologic action. So I'm waiting for the day when some homeopath or non-professional homeopath gets taken to court for practicing medicine without a license. And he says, what medicine? They say, well, you gave a homeopathic remedy. That's not a medicine. Yes, it is. The FDA says it's a drug. Well, isn't a drug something that has a material substance in it and a physiologic effect? Yes, it is. Well, here's my remedy. Show me what's in it, and I'll go to jail if you can find something. Because that's basically the argument.
Did you ever read the book Initiation by Elizabeth H.?
The book Initiation by Elizabeth H.
H.
No.
In the beginning of the book, it's sort of a classic. It was written in 1967, 65. She talks about exactly what you're talking about, how illnesses come through spirit. And it would be a great book here for everybody to take a look at. Especially the beginning of the book, she goes into great detail about how she's discovered that. She's very famous over in Europe.
Thank you. In the back.
Do you practice homeopathy according to the way Hahnemann did originally?
That's my belief.
Okay. And do you use more remedies than are covered in the Materia Medica?
I mean, do I use a remedy that's not been tested?
No. But I have an old book, Materia Medica, and I forget what the name of it is.
Okay, let me clarify that. Materia Medica is a book that's like Encyclopedia Britannica. Only instead of talking about airplanes and spaceships and lawnmowers, it tells you each remedy, what it's about, how it works, what its nature is. And there are books that are written 100 years ago that have maybe 50 or 100 or 300 remedies. And there are more modern books that have greater numbers, and some like this have only 6 remedies. This is a Materia Medica. It's got 6 remedies in it. So if you compile them all together, then our Materia Medica spans over 2,500 remedies. I don't know if you were aware of that. The book you have would be considered incomplete. There's no one book that carries every remedy.
I have 2 questions. The first one, why would I want to, if you were truthful in what you said about the scorpion and what was done to make it so pissed off and angry, why would I want to partake in homeopathy if that feels like being abusive to the spirit of the scorpion?
Yeah, so it's a question I've heard before. If you do something somewhat evil to a substance in order to, create a remedy, I think that that's a difficult question to answer why you as an individual would or wouldn't. The spirit of all of these...
I can see killing it, but starving it, putting for days on end so that it was really, get me out of this box or I'm going to just scream.
Yeah. I can't speak for the...
I'm hungry and I'm going to just,
Right.
first thing I see, I'm
Yeah,
take it slow.
I'll tell you my personal answer. I can't speak for other homeopaths. I can't speak for other individuals. But you can kill a single being and, say, a honeybee. And out of that one honeybee, you can make enough remedy to treat literally thousands and thousands of people. I know of no other system of production that is so prolific from the least amount of harm. I also know that there are some entities, which I call entities, that infect people's spirits that are so malicious, they require such a high degree of that energy that without such a substance, they would not have any hope from the homeopathic route.
So would you say maybe a prayer over taking the life, something, as far as, maybe, as far as what do you do, how do you affect the remedy yourself, being a conduit of energy yourself? I mean, it would seem that I would be choosy about which homeopath I would go to as far as energetically where they're coming from.
Right. Is that part of the same question you're asking about? How do you choose a homeopath based on who they are energetically, right, as a person, and how that would correspond or resonate with you?
We're talking about a shaman, so in bringing those remedies here, it would seem to me that whoever is preparing them, shaking them, diluting them, their energy is part of the remedy.
Yeah.
Different people shape things differently with, different intent.
Yeah. The hidden messages in water has proved to us that how you interact with things affects it. Quantum physics has proven how you interact with things affects it. So if a person is manufacturing a remedy and has a negative intent and is playing heavy metal music in the background, that's going to have a different imprint on that medium than if someone is bringing positive, loving, whatever kind of intent to the process. I know of no study that's ever looked at that with homeopathy. I would agree that it probably is a factor. I would also say that the essential core principle of a substance would dominate that environment, even if there were some negative fragments mixing in with it. I would still say it's hard to imagine to negate the general spiritual essence, which is so strong and stable. We have remedies that were made 200 years ago, and they're equally active as they were 200 years ago. How stable is that? I mean, that's 200 years is nothing compared to, some things in millennia, but.
Well, I wanted to ask this because you passed that vial around.
Right.
And the only time I really remember hearing something about belladonna was somebody saying, I ingested some belladonna.
Was that belladonna I passed around?
Yes. And
They all the same to me.
This was years ago, and I was coming out of the 60s and 70s and
Yeah.
the mushrooms and the peyote and all
Right.
that kind of stuff. And he said to me that after he ingested that, he has no memory of the next 2 weeks, and he came to when he was hitchhiking on
Yeah.
a highway somewhere.
Yeah.
2 weeks later. So
But
in my mind, I thought, I have never heard of anything that powerful. So
Yeah.
just
But he didn't take a potency, he took the plant.
yeah.
Yeah, it's toxic.
Did you take it with a fifth of whiskey?
Ed?
Yeah, just a comment. I visited the resource factors, and they've gone out of their way to make it mechanical to minimize the human effect on the remedies. And I can imagine back when it began, it had the hand succussing, within the homeopath's hands, you probably have some pretty wild variations there depending
Yeah.
on how the homeopath felt as they sat there
Right.
doing these things. But
Yeah.
now it's much more.
Yeah, but my feeling is something in between, because even though it's in that mechanical mode now, the evidence is that remote effects are still remote effects. Like you can still have like people praying at a distance and they impact something, and so I think you can never totally escape this multi-field phenomena. But in truth, most people who are making their own remedies, their intent in mind is, I'm making this so that I can give this to such and such a person because they came to me for aid. I mean, unless you're an evil person yourself, and then that's your unlucky choice of a homeopath or a healer in general. Most of the time, you're getting people who have the intent of helping. Why are they going through all this trouble otherwise? There's much easier ways to harm someone than to, manufacture a high-potency remedy. And, I know it was graphic what I said about the scorpion, and I said that more not so much to be insensitive to, it is a being. It has a right to have, its essence was created by a divine spirit. Nevertheless, I think that there was a positive intent behind the negative act, because I know the person who did the proving, and I know his love for homeopathy and love for people is way bigger than anything I've ever seen about him that could be possibly construed as negative. So that's all I can say about that.
Yeah, you said that the greater the dilution, the greater the potency. How can you explain that?
Because we're dealing with principles that are, in some ways, inversely related to matter, the degree of materialization. The principle of homeopathy is its spiritual impact. The spiritual quality of something is intensified the further it is from material form. So as you bring it further from material form, you're intensifying the raw spiritual quality of it. It's the best I can tell you.
If you don't treat my symptom, how do you know what I know?
You're next. If you don't treat my symptom, how do I know what you need? Symptoms and signs, meaning things that you can see or sense or observe. Symptoms are things people report. Signs are things that you and other people can observe. Those constellation of things you report and I observe will inform me. Let's go back to this. Before anyone got sick, or when someone is really healthy, they have kind of a natural beauty and zest and feel. They look vital, their eyes glow and bright, and their body is usually free of any kind of nagging long-term chronic problem, because the healthy vital force rules with unbounded sway and keeps the body in harmonious balance, proper function, etc. When you become infected by a spiritual entity that is not life-giving but is life-damaging, it will impact how your vital force moves through your organism. Eventually that will manifest as signs and symptoms, physical, mental, emotional. You will call those signs and symptoms a name. That name is not related in any way to this. But those signs and symptoms will have a pattern, and that pattern will tell me what, it's like somebody's fingerprint. Because I can't see this directly either, but I can see the trail that it left behind. And by its shape in your life, I can deduce who it really is. And then I can find a remedy to match that. So I'm not really trying to treat your symptoms. I'm using them as a way to refer back. It's like that, what was that show where they would have like 3 people and they say, will the real so-and-so please stand up? And it's kind of like it's a detective thing. It's not a medical diagnostic thing.
Thank you.
Yep.
My question is more along the lines of the same. To speak to, could you speak to how you select a remedy for an individual? Let's say they come in complaining about indigestion, and let's say there are 40 remedies in your database that address indigestion, among other things. So what are the subtleties that
Yeah.
you look for?
Yeah. The question of what you look for, actually, you're approaching the territory of how does one do homeopathy. And the answer to how one does homeopathy is similar to the answer of how does one become a shaman, which is you go through a long, rigorous training program for many, many, many years. That's really the true answer. The second thing is that the biggest stumbling block for most people I meet who ask questions about how do you pick between this symptom and that symptom is that I'm not focusing whatsoever on what you think I should be focusing on. Because you said, well, what about the indigestion? I'm not interested in the indigestion. I'm interested in this. The shaman is too. The shaman's looking for what is the spiritual cause of your life's spiritual difficulties. He's not asking what's your religious difficulties, he's just saying what's disturbing your spirit so that you can't be you. So you're not the flower in the face that you were created to be. That's what I'm looking for. What kind of flower are you and what is not letting you be that flower? You can tell me, well, how do I decide between indigestion and this? I'm never looking at that. Because the minute I start looking at that, I'm in the material world. And I'm divorced from the world where my power lies, my power to help.
Well, can you give an example of, say, a visit someone comes to you and you're just out of your practice anonymously?
Yeah. Okay, belladonna is a very good example. Must have come up for a reason. Belladonna, when given to healthy people, creates a lot of heat, ascending heat. Belladonna is eruptive. It is volcanic. This is its nature. Okay? So it has a quality of intensity, a quality of heat, redness, intensity, violence, eruption, volcanic. Okay? Had a little girl come to my office wearing red. Mom says, she has an eruptive temper, kicks, bites, punches, screams. She gets red in the face, she's wild. So she needs belladonna. I match the quality of the substance to the quality of that person's pattern. She says, well, you didn't, that was 2 minutes. What do you, don't you want to hear about her toe fungus and, you know, her stomach aches? And you can tell me, sure, I'd love to hear. It's not going to change the pattern. It's not going to change that this thing revealed itself to me. So I don't care if she has ADD, PMS, LMNOP, QRX. I don't care if she has chronic this or acute that. I don't care if she's on this drug or that drug. It doesn't make any difference. I'm not looking at that. I'm not trying to address that. I don't want to address that.
And do you find it as effective to practice homeopathy in person with a patient or on the phone?
Some people have, they're more adept when they're in person. Some people, I do mostly phone work. I work on the phone probably 80 to 90% of the time. And it seems to work fine. Because again, it's like we're not dealing with making a diagnosis. We're just trying to grasp what's off spiritually.
What if somebody comes in with a stomach ache, though? What do you look for, if not the stomach ache? I mean, what do you...
So the answer is, the question is, what do you look for if someone comes in with a stomach ache? What do you look for? The question is, and that's what they come to you for. This is why shamans and homeopaths have such a hard time in life. Because it's almost like we have this gap, we have this bridge we need to construct between the consciousness of disease, material disease, and the consciousness of spiritual disease. Because the shaman and the homeopath doesn't live on the side of the river where they're busy and worrying about material disease. They're on this other side of the river where they're seeing that most of what those people on that side are complaining about come from this side of the river. But I don't feel over here that my spirit is disturbed. I just have a stomach ache. What are you going to do about it? And this guy's over here on this side of the river saying, I know she thinks she has a stomach ache, but if she could only see that 3 lifetimes ago, 6, samurai demons came in and blah, 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 and disturbed this and that, and she carried it through 3 more lifetimes and then made decisions in this lifetime to perpetuate it, so the door was open and these entities are swarming in her being, and I really need to eradicate them. If I could, I probably would see that stomach ache go away. But I don't remember anything about that, just my stomach hurts. Are you going to comment? Or?
Yeah, comment.
Yeah, please. Help is on its way.
The confusion comes that if you buy a homeopathic remedy, you look at them, it'll say for stomach aches.
Yeah.
But you'll have them. So you have this sort of division that's gone on in homeopathy between those who do take a spiritual approach and those who try to do allopathic homeopathy.
Help has arrived. Thank you very much. That's true. The FDA is a funny animal. They're regulating something they don't understand themselves. Quite literally. I could promise you there's not a member of the FDA who knows what I'm talking about. They think they're regulating a drug. They're busy doing it. They probably don't even want to have the responsibility anymore. It came through some senator who was sympathetic to homeopathy, got the FDA to get on board. And now they require an indication. But what is one indication out of, I told you that these are provings. These are all indications. Hundreds and hundreds of indications for a remedy, and they pick one. It's not good. But you're right. People think that this is something for something. That's the fault maybe of our labeling practices. It's also the fault of lack of education or familiarity with the principles I'm talking about. But I really want to answer your question. So you come to me. I'm sitting over here, you're sitting over there, but we're both in the same office. It looks like we're on the same side. And you say, I have a stomach ache. And I say, well, tell me about it. When did it start? What's it like? How has it affected you? Et cetera, et cetera. Sooner or later, you're going to reveal a pattern. Because your stomach ache is going to be unique. There's nobody in the world who's going to have the same stomach ache as you. I love it. Someone comes in and they say, when you get a cold, and I'm like, yeah, I know when I get a cold, and your left ear turns red? I'm like, no. Really? They say, yeah, when you get a cold and you get a sore throat, and I go, yeah, and then your left ear turns red, and then your right big toe starts to shake? Well, this person thinks because every time they get a cold, their left ear turns red and their big toe starts to shake, that that's universal. And people are like that about their illnesses. You know when you're like walking down the street at night and you know there's someone behind you, but they're not really? People take it for granted that everybody's experience is universal. I walk down the street and I don't really feel like someone's behind me, unless there is someone behind me. But other people always have that feeling. Someone's behind me. They don't like to walk at night because of that. You will reveal yourself. The part that you'll reveal is a piece of this shadow, which for you is very real. It's a stomachache. But it's really connected. And so I'm still standing over here looking like I'm here with you, but I'm over here trying to help you up there when you think I'm helping you down here.
Is that the process of soul retrieval?
You know, I thought about that after you mentioned it. And I can tell you, having taken remedies for many years, that I feel like this is my feeling, it's not a proof. I feel like I'm more integrated with my soul is more integrated with me. I feel that way. And most people who are on good remedies for a while feel that. They feel more themselves. They feel more like whole, more centered, more together. So I would say that very likely it's a similar process. Or it's a similar result, maybe a different approach to the same process. As a shaman who would say, I'm going to go out and do soul retrieval and bring a piece back.
Right.
Because who knows what they really mean when they say that?
Right.
Who knows what I really mean when I say this?
And that shaman may have the same experience with this woman who has a stomachache as you
Yeah.
have.
And make the same manipulation to the spirit as the remedy did. Might be the same. We have about 10 more minutes, I guess. Oh boy. Who hasn't spoken yet? Okay, so you next, you first.
I'm a little confused. I've been reading a book called Radical Healing. Are you familiar with that book? I can't tell you the author's name.
Yeah.
He's an MD, but I've been reading about homeopathy in there. And when you started out, you drew that example up there. You had like 4 signs and symptoms. I thought you were going to go in the same direction he was talking about, which is the author looked at these signs and symptoms as all having some commonality, and that perhaps the remedy for these may be different. And I saw him in his writings prescribing several remedies that are maybe directed at these different signs and symptoms until, through a process of elimination, discovering which one actually address that inner core issue. Where when I hear you talking about it now, it sounds like what you're saying in the examples you've given is that you're only really addressing one sign or symptom and prescribing a remedy. Am I misunderstanding you?
Yeah, so the question is about whether some homeopaths address several signs and symptoms and others address single ones at a time. Is that correct? But I would reiterate maybe in another way that my understanding of homeopathy is you're never addressing signs and symptoms, period. You're using signs and symptoms as a guide or pointers to discern the true causal element at the core.
Right, and he talks about using them as pointers also. But what I'm saying is that the remedies for these different signs and symptoms may be different, so he's not certain until he's prescribed all of them.
Yeah.
He's done an elimination process based on whether the patient gets better or not.
Yeah, so someone's almost like, it almost sounds like he's experimenting to figure out which is the best remedy. I think preferable to that is to see from the next step up and to see which one is the correct one before you give one of the 3 or one of the 4. I mean, to me, the ideal is to hit the bullseye the first time rather than to say, well, one of these might hit the bullseye, I don't know which one.
No, maybe I wasn't clear. He may give the 3 or 4 all at once.
Oh, so some people out there do what's called combination homeopathy, and you can see these on the shelves. It's Formula 101 from Unda or who knows what, and what's in Formula 101 is for hay fever, and the hay fever has 6 or 7 different remedies in it. How does that sound to you from what I've told you? Does that sound like homeopathy?
Shotgun approach.
It's a shotgun approach, but a shotgun approach to what?
Symptoms.
Symptoms. So is it homeopathy? Now, people will say it's homeopathy because they'll say it's homeopathic remedies in there. And I'll tell you, no, there are no homeopathic remedies. There are only potencies that are homeopathic to you. So you can't really call these homeopathic remedies at all. These are potencies. Homeopathic if they match the spiritual disease that they're interacting with. So that it's like it's dependent on the circumstance whether it's homeopathic or not. And a lot of those combination remedies will borrow from the allopathic principle, which is a suppressive principle. That if you give enough of these remedies, you might match enough of the symptoms to fool the vital force that you've actually done the right intervention, and then the vital force responds by overcoming those sets of symptoms. But the true disease remains. Just like when you take a drug, the true disease often remains. So you can use these potencies to create all kinds of effects, just like giving one at a time will create an effect. But the only way to do a cure is by the principles of healing, which has to do with likenesses and similarities. So you really want to take the one that's most like the core essence that you're trying to get rid of, which is that evil, inimical force or entity or whatever you want to call it.
I was just wondering if you receive or give a lot of energy body work kind of things, does that antidote?
Yeah, so first the word comes up that a lot of people may not know, which is antidote. And it's one of the jargons of homeopathy. Antidoting meaning that someone was taking a remedy and it was working and they were feeling better over time and then gradually their symptoms were resolving, etc. And then they get exposed to some activity or some substance, and all of a sudden that positive action either disappears or it reverses, and they call that antidoting. And so then the question is, does energy work? Because this is looked at as energy work. So this kind of energy work, and then you get another kind of energy work, and does that somehow interfere and create disturbance? It's a good question. The answer is sometimes, maybe, depends. And that's true with, people here. You can't drink coffee if you do homeopathy. You can't take a medicine if you do homeopathy. You can't sneeze if you do homeopathy. You can't, swear if you do homeopathy. It really always depends. It's always individual. Some people drink 6 cups a day and the remedies work fine. Other people walk into a coffee shop and just smell the coffee and their remedy goes, So that's...
My understanding of the spirit world is, there's no real space and time. So I'm just curious, in your experience, when you give someone a treatment, is the response time pretty standard the same time, or do some people... you kind of were just saying it's slow, so how does that work?
Yeah, boys, you open up a can of worms with 2 minutes left. So the question is that I understand in the spirit world there's no space and time. So there's no 2 bridges we can't even have to cross. And so why is there different lengths of time for healing, etc.? I will say that remedies always act instantaneously because the remedy is in that world of no space-time. However, the spirit world and how it impacts us and manifests in this world of time and space is variable. So, for example, this whole idea of delaying gratification? So some people, they decide to be doctors, and so while other people are out partying and skiing and all these kinds of things, they're sitting in the library studying for their MCATs and taking all these pre-med courses, et cetera, and it takes a long, long time for them to see the benefits of what idea started, say, 12 years before. And so they have this idea, I'm going to be a doctor, and then 12, 15 years later, they're a doctor. and there was this whole big space and time between. Yet the event, the seed event, was 12 years earlier. It would be very unusual for someone to say, I want to be a doctor, and wake up the next day, barring time travel, and they would be a full-fledged doctor. Or any specialty, it doesn't make any difference. Or a child waking up and...
People with
honorary degrees, yeah, they get those over. But they worked hard too, usually. So, it'd be very unusual for a baby in the crib to say, I'm ready to be an adult. And then the next morning you wake up and look in the crib and this is this adult in a big diaper. So there are certain processes that don't manifest immediately, even though the change is already there.
Can I ask a correlation?
So the answer to your question, and then you can ask the corollary, is that it's not that the remedies don't work instantaneously. They're working, but the manifestation of the effects will take time according to natural principles. Okay, there's all kinds of variables in that stew. But I have seen people like amazing things, like a child who's dehydrated and lethargic and not responding and had diarrhea for 3 days and has a high fever and doesn't even know he's in the room with you. And you put a remedy on the tongue and you walk out just to get a Kleenex, and you come back in, the child's playing on the floor with your toys. I have seen that. So you would say that the time to go through this conduit of changing here and manifesting here could seem miraculous. It can also seem painfully slow. But yet the change has happened already instantaneously, but it takes so long for some things to hit here. And that has to do with all kinds of principles and processes that we don't have time to get into. Quick corollary, and then we'll go to you, and then I think we should stop.
So I was just going to say, do you ever find that you may have to, I was going to say, adjust a remedy or rethink what you perceive the original causes to be, or do you just trust your information as you get it the first time?
Well, cases evolve. When you take a homeopathic remedy that's correct, that case evolves over time. Whenever you do homeopathy, the first experience is to have an initial interview so that person can understand through speaking with you what the energetic or what the spiritual disturbance might be. Then you start taking a remedy, and then you have to have periodic interviews to follow the progress. And at some point, it may be that remedy finished its action, and there's another remedy that comes to the surface that's the next phase, because it may not be one thing that's doing all the damage. It may be complex, but you can only deal with what's on the surface and visible and observable. And then sometimes it just takes, I've had someone on the same remedy for 4 years, and every visit they're improving. And maybe 2 years before the present, 2 years into it, they had already gotten to the point where they would have thought in the beginning that's all they wanted. And then from there to the next 2 years, they went way beyond what they could have even thought was possible for them. So you just have to look at case by case. There was one in the back, and then...
I was just curious about the little girl with the rage and the turning red, the belladonna case.
That was, yeah.
Would a person like that be attracted to moving to the Big Island, where the volcanoes are? I mean, does that
put pictures on the table and say, where do you want to live?
No, but would it help them if they lived in an area that was
Okay.
explosive like that?
Okay.
Hold them, or would you put them in a peaceful
Yeah,
area?
there are correspondences in life. I mean, she did wear red that day. I don't know why. I wouldn't give belladonna just because she's wearing red or he's wearing red. But when it all fits, it all fits. You can't help it. Someone will say that I spent my whole life studying turtles or something. And they need a remedy from a turtle. Or, actually the belladonna has nothing to do with the volcano environment. It has something to do with the energy, the volcano energy. So it's not like a plant I don't think grows in volcanic soil. I'm not 100% sure, but because I'm not a botanist. But for example, there's a remedy made from Hekla lava, which is a volcano called it's lava from that volcano. And so it might be that if a person needs that, they may find that they're drawn to spelunking in volcanic caves or something like that. That could happen. Just like people are drawn to mineral springs, and they get healing. People are drawn often to the source of their healing. Someone who needs the remedy Nature Muriaticum, which is table salt, plain sodium chloride, you'll often find they have a huge craving for salt all the time. or people who need scorpion tend to like to hang out in the desert and hide behind rocks. Well, thank you very much, all of you, for coming. I appreciate all your questions and your comments and input.
RVML Resource Center is a volunteer-operated federal 501c3 tax-exempt nonprofit organization. RVML is dedicated to providing easy access to a comprehensive collection of information on a variety of metaphysical, spiritual, and personal development subjects. RVML accepts and appreciates all donations. Material and monetary contributions are fully tax-deductible. This recording is not copyrighted, and permission is granted to broadcast, exhibit, or duplicate all or part of this program for non-commercial educational purposes. This live presentation was organized and presented by the Rogue Valley Metaphysical Library and Event Center. For more information, please visit rvml.org.